Welcome to this video session on Markdown Basics. The objective of this session is to understand how to use Markdown on Jupyter Notebook. This Markdown capability in Jupyter Notebook enables you to express the code written in Python, R or Julia programming languages. Knowing about Markdown enables you to express yourself about the code. You can write text. The text can be in bold or italic or list format. You can quote anything. For example, you pick some sentence from a research paper. You can write text into different headings. You can embed code in your explanation. You can tabulate some information. And if there are any equations or tables or local files such as images, you can embed them in your Markdown into your Jupyter notebook so that you can express yourself. Without further ado, let's understand how to use Markdown capabilities in the Jupyter notebook. The assumption is you have some working knowledge on how to use Microsoft Word document or Google document. You typically create these documents to write some reports or something important for you to capture your thoughts in a systematic process and to share it with readers. The goal is to create a document in this format where it has a heading by name Markdown Basics, followed by section wise headings, contents, bullet points, subsections. Each subsection has content in it. Itemized or enumerated lists subsection, which contains unordered lists in this format, and ordered lists as numeric indicators. Similarly, you can quote write different headings, embedding code into explanation, equations and tables. Last but not least, read local files into your Jupyter Notebook environment through Markdown so that complete document like this can be generated in Word document format, in PDF format, HTML format, and other formats that Jupyter Notebook supports. Please remember to activate your virtual environment using the source command. Then run Jupyter Space Notebook command in order to run the web server and start using the Jupyter Notebook. If you choose to use Jupyter Notebook over Jupyter Labs, then you'll have a screen that looks like this. You can create a Jupyter Notebook by going to New. And remember, Jupyter Notebook supports Julia programming, Python programming, and R programming. In the current case, we are working with Python. So we use Python kernel to open a Jupyter Notebook. The Jupyter Notebook looks like this when you are using Jupyter Notebook command. Assume that you do not want to use Jupyter Notebook. Instead, you want to use Jupyter Lab, and in the Jupyter Lab, you want to open Jupyter Notebook. I will quickly show it how. Let me close this untitled Jupyter Notebook that I currently opened here. Make sure that you shut down the Jupyter Notebook instance that you opened by selecting the untitled Jupyter Notebook and clicking on the shutdown. After all the instances are shut down on your Jupyter Notebook, click on the quit button. The moment you use quit button, the server is stopped. You can close this and you can close the window as well. I'm closing this. When you check it here, the command prompt shuts down the server and you're back on the command prompt. Let me open the Jupyter Lab. The command to open the Jupyter lab is Jupyter-lab as shown here. A server will be run and this server opens the Jupyter lab for you. The difference between Jupyter Notebook and Jupyter Lab are discussed in the previous YouTube video. I request you to check that. Separately, earlier you had to navigate from front and back to look at the files that are available and to open that particular file. Remember, we opened a Jupyter Notebook and the Jupyter Notebook had an untitled name. So if you want to rename it, you right click here and select rename and call it as a test notebook. Or if you want to delete this Jupyter notebook, select this Jupyter notebook, do a right click and then delete this Jupyter notebook by clicking here. Illustrating the creation of the Word document that I mentioned earlier using this Jupyter notebook underscore 101 file. I double clicked on it. This part of this Jupyter notebook is same when you choose to use Jupyter notebooks instead of Jupyter Lab. But the reason I've used Jupyter Lab is it is much more interactive with respect to the file system I have here. Now let's move on to the next step of understanding the Jupyter notebook and how it interacts with your Python command prompt and how you can write your code in the Jupyter notebook. Let me illustrate the Jupyter notebook through which we aim to create the Word document. Before doing that, let me explain what is a cell in Jupyter Notebook. A cell is an interface that connects to the kernel of the Jupyter Notebook. So earlier when we opened the Jupyter Notebook, we selected the kernel Python 3. A cell interacts with the kernel and then prints certain details according to what you put in the cell. So we define the type of a cell. The cell can be either Markdown or it can be a code in R, Python or Julia. Because we are using Python 3 kernel, when we select code, the code is written in Python. When you select Markdown, it will interact with the Python kernel, but it will use the Markdown packages and then it will follow the Markdown commands. First step, how to create a cell. In order to create a cell, use this plus symbol on the top bar of the Jupyter notebook. Click on the plus symbol. As you see, a cell is created. You can move the cell up or down by using the arrow symbols. And this cell can be either code cell or markdown cell or something else. For example, I want to write a code and sum two numbers. Say a sum of 9 plus 4. So you can see that this is identified as a code. The numbers 4 and 9 are in green color and plus symbol is in sort of a purple color. To run this code cell, you can click on play symbol or you can use Control Shift and Enter together using the keyboard. Now, if you change this to Markdown, see how the output will change. Control Shift and Enter is in a blue color and 9 plus 4 does not indicate any distinction in the code. When you run this using the play symbol, it gives you a different output. So this Control Shift Enter looks like a heading or a title of the page. 9 plus 4 is printed as a markdown cell. Helps us write comments. Assume that I want to add two numbers. The first number is 9, second number is 4. Addition of two numbers is typically written in this format. When I use this in Markdown, the entire text is printed, but the hash illustration of addition of two numbers is converted into a heading. Asterisk first number is 9, asterisk second number is 4 are converted into bullet points. 9 plus 4 are shown separate. So if you want to see how the same thing looks on Python cell, I suggest writing another cell, select this cell as a code and paste the code. In Python, if you want to exclude any code from execution, use hash before that particular line of code. The asterisk is and 9, which are shown in green color, are identified by Python, but the first number and second number are not recognized by the Python. So if you run this, it will throw an error because the first number and second number does not have any significance. You can check the same by running this. So see the first number, something is invalid here. I'm deleting all these lines and just running this line of code, which is 9 plus 4. In fact, to make it more illustrative, in the first markdown cell, you can say that illustration of addition of two numbers beginning with hash. First number is 9, second number is 4. And you can ask a question, for example, what is sum of 9 and 4? The Python code will be 9 plus 4 is 13. This is how you can write your code comment in Markdown cell and then execute the Python code in the subsequent cell. This is the reason why Jupyter Notebook along with the Markdown enables you to be more expressive on what type of code you write. I hope this part of using Markdown cell and Python code cell is very clear to you. Just to summarize what we learned. When you're using Jupyter Notebook, whether through Jupyter Lab or standalone Jupyter Notebook, you need to use a cell to interact with the Markdown if you are writing text and with the Python kernel if you are writing Python code. I'm showing you Markdown cell on Jupyter Notebook. When you execute it, the entire text written in this Markdown cell will be displayed as an output. The next cell is Python code cell. When you execute this Python code cell, prints the output of this particular command through Python kernel. In some instances, you may have to switch between Python cell and Markdown cell. In that case, there is a very simple keyboard shortcut. Select this cell, and when you enter M on your keyboard, it becomes the Markdown cell. You can see the change here. When you press keyboard action Y, it changes to code cell as you can see here. And you can execute it as a Python code. So keep in mind, there is a keyboard shortcut to switch between Markdown cell to code cell and vice versa on Jupyter Notebook. Now, let me demonstrate how to create the Word document shown on the left side using Markdown. At the left side is a Google document in which Markdown Basics is a heading. Content starts as a subheading or second order heading. It has a sequence of bullet points from 1 to 9, followed by explanation of each of the bullet points. As a subsection, each subsection has content explaining about this subsection. Typically, we write text as plain text. Sometimes we may use italic and bold text. Another key practice while writing the Word documents is listing. You write bullet points. Usually, bullet points are either ordered or unordered. I believe you know how to write the ordered lists and unordered lists, or ordered bullet points or unordered bullet points. Next part deals with how to create a quote. Here is an example of how to create a good quote in Word document. Next, there are different levels of headings, followed by embedding code in an explanation, writing equations, tables, and at the end, import the local files. This forms the structure of the Markdown Basics document that I created on Google document at the left. Now our goal is to use Jupyter Notebook and create the same Word document shown at the left side. Come on. For every document, there is a title, subtitle, and other contents. In this case of Google document at the left side, Markdown Basics is a title, as you can see here. Contents is a subtitle. So how do you write something similar to title and subtitle in Markdown Jupyter Notebook? Let's have a look at it. Title is the first order in terms of font size. Subtitle is the second order in terms of font size. In case of Markdown in Jupyter Notebook, the first title has highest order begins with 1 hash. The subsequent orders will have an additional hash. Second, contents is a subtitle. It is in the second order compared to the Markdown Basics title. So it has 2 hashes here. When you look at the Google document at the left side, you have the bullet points starting at 1 italic text and ending at 9 local files. The same property on Markdown is achieved by writing 1 dot space italic text followed by the respective numbers until 9 dot space local files. As soon as you have sufficient information on your Markdown cell, execute that cell and it creates an output which looks exactly similar to the left side on Google document. Moving on to the next part of italic text and bold text. How do you write italic and bold text? In case of Google document or Word document, you can choose a property such as italic by tilted I symbol. When you press italic, the text will change to italic format. If you uncheck it, it becomes a normal text. How do we achieve same property on Markdown? It is very simple. Put the text that you want to convert into italic between 2 asterisks without spaces. You have an asterisk which is beginning, followed by that particular word you want to italicize, and then end that word with asterisk and do not include any spaces between the asterisk and that particular word you want to italicize. When you run this cell, you got this text which is in italic format. Say you want to convert a sentence into italic format. In that case, put the entire sentence between asterisk. Start the sentence preceding an asterisk without any space and ending with asterisk without any space. Likewise, when you're writing bold text, you can bold and unbold using the B on Google document. When I selected B, the surrounding word is converted into bold format. When I uncheck the B, the surrounding word is going back to the normal text. In case I have to achieve the same property on Markdown, put this text between double asterisks. Let's see how this can be achieved. So in case you want to convert the same text and make the word bold into bold text and surroundings into bold text, in that case, add double asterisks before this word and end the word with double asterisks without any spaces between them. Now, when you check, the text output is in bold format. In case you want to convert a sentence into bold format, in that scenario, put the whole text between double asterisks without any spaces and run this Markdown cell. Next, moving to the topic of numbered and unnumbered lists. Usually, while writing a Word document or making any notes, we have tendency to note important points in bullet points. Unordered lists are nothing but bullet points. One important option on Word document is to select this bulleted list. For unordered list, how do we achieve same functionality while using Markdown on Jupyter Notebook? So first item, second item, and third item are unordered lists. They do not have a number preceding the first item. It's just a bullet point. When you click on this Markdown cell, you see a very simplistic form of expressing the bullet points. In order to write bullet points on Jupyter Notebook, begin with an asterisk, provide a space, and write your text. Repeat the same process for any number of bullet points you want to create. Then execute this cell, and your output will show bullet points. Next, there could be nested bullet points where parent bullet point is 1 followed by sublist. How do you create these nested bullet points? Begin first bullet point with asterisk followed by space and write your text. After you're done with parent bullet point, in the next line, by tab space, create an asterisk, give a space, and write child text. Continue to repeat this process for any number of child bullet points you require. This is how you create unordered bullet points on Jupyter Notebook. When it comes to ordered, there are two ways. One is to begin with a greater symbol followed by space and start writing bullet points with numeric values. In the next line, do not write the greater symbol. It wraps numbered bullet points into a quote kind of a format. So you see, there is a little bit of space from where your ordered list has begun, and it shows that all these numeric bullet points are in sort of a quote. If you want to write the bullet points separately outside the quote, you can begin your first item starting with one dot space followed by first item, and next give a tab space and start child of the first item, followed by child of the second item. Continue in this manner depending on number of ordered bullet points you might require. The next topic is writing the block quotes. Assume you read a research article. You want to use some text in a research article as a quote on your Jupyter notebook, and let this quote act as an explanation for the code in the next cell. In that scenario, Markdown allows you to integrate block codes using greater symbols. Let's look at how this is done. This is text you want to use as a quote. Precede this entire text by greater than symbol and a space on the markdown cell. Execute the cell that displays you a quote separated by a line so that you can distinguish it as a quote while reading the Jupyter notebook. The next topic is rewrite the headings. Remember, I mentioned earlier that on a Word document, you'll have title followed by subtitle, section headings, subsection headings, and so on. This is nothing but an order. The title has the highest order. The title of document has the highest font, followed by subtitle, then section and subsections. An order has been created related to the size of the fonts for title, subtitle, sections, and subsections. How do you achieve these ordered fonts using Markdown? It is very simple. For the highest fonts, say title, use hash. For the next highest font, use double hashes. Let me show it here through an illustration. Creating another Markdown cell. Make sure you change it from code to Markdown. Have a title. Subtitle has second order compared to the title, so I'm using 2 hashes. Then a section. Section has a lower order compared to subtitle. Subsection, you write subsection within section, say a subsection 1 and a subsection 2. In that case, when writing subsection 2, it has lower order compared to subsection 1. Therefore, 4 hashes to subsection 2. Depending on number of sections, subsections, continue to add 1 hash to each of those subsections. When you finish this type of ordering, write text in between your sections and subsections and execute your markdown cell. You'll see an output of text where title has the highest order, subtitle has second highest order with font size slightly smaller than title but slightly higher than section. Likewise, when you see the text of subsection 1, subsection 1's font size is slightly lower than section font but slightly higher than the subsection font. The next topic is to integrate code blocks in your markdowns. To explain code clearly, Markdown provides a very simple functionality to integrate code. Use triple quotes before and after the code. This is a function definition in Python that returns square of a number when you pass a number. Before and after this function definition, use triple quotes. This enables Markdown to recognize that a code block has been integrated along with the text. To see the output, execute this Markdown cell, and the output display shows that a function definition has been integrated to read along with the Markdown cell. Another example here is calculating average of a list of numbers. Here, the code calculates the average of list of numbers and prints the output. Before and after the code, I used triple quotes. This enables integration of the code into the Markdown cell. When you execute it, you can see a clearly written code in the Markdown cell. Let us discuss how to integrate mathematical expressions or equations in Jupyter Notebook through Markdown syntax. Why do you need mathematical expressions or equations? In certain scenarios of machine learning, deep learning, there are some scientific papers written in mathematics which require you to convert them into code and test them or use them in your application. In that scenario, the best way to explain about your code is to write those mathematical equations or expressions. Second, say you are in finance domain and developing some trading strategies or risk management strategies. In that scenario, a mathematical expression and illustration enables you to clearly communicate with your team and portfolio managers regarding your strategy. So, having mathematical equations or expressions enables clear communication and empowers yourself and your collaborators to understand the code to integrate mathematical equations. There is a tool by name LaTeX. Markdown embeds this LaTeX and converts this LaTeX code into mathematical expressions or equations. In this example one, we have a mathematical equation e power I pi plus 1 is equal to 0. In order to write this on Markdown, you need to first create the LaTeX equivalent of this mathematical equation. Take this LaTeX equivalent, embed it in the Markdown through two approaches. First approach is to embed the LaTeX between $2 symbols. The second approach is embed this LaTeX mathematical equation between slash begin equation and slash end equation. Let me do a quick demonstration. The example one is a Markdown cell in which the LaTeX part of e power I pi plus 1 is equal to 0 is highlighted here. And this LaTeX part of the mathematical equation is placed between $2 symbols. When you do this in a Markdown cell, the Markdown implicitly understands that this is a LaTeX code and it needs to be converted into mathematical expression. Similarly, in the example 2, LaTeX expression is integrated between begin and end equation. When you run this cell, gives you a clear output of good mathematical formulation. The next topic is to create tables on Markdown. Markdown interface through Jupyter Notebook provides very minimalistic approach to create tables. Usually tables have columns and rows. The first step is to create the columns. In order to create the columns, separate each column using pipe symbol or pipe on your keyboard. And in the next line, write three or more hyphens to indicate markdown to separate this part as a column. Once you enable Markdown to identify a column through the approach just I mentioned, you need to create a row. Each row should separate the column contents by a pipe operator. Let me show you through an illustration. In the example one, we have this and is as two column names. Each column name begins with a pipe, separated by a pipe, and ended by a pipe. Make sure that the column names are written with pipe operators. After you write the column names and separate them by pipe operators, create a next line that has pipes and the dashed lines. Repeat this for as many column names and rows. Each column will have rows, and for each row, follow the similar approach. Say I want to create another column name. This is a column ended by pipe. In the next line, write the dashes and end by pipe. This is row. Provide the spaces and end the row with the pipe. When you execute this Markdown cell, you'll see another column name is created here with the row values as row. You can repeat this similar text for number of rows and number of columns as shown in this example 2 and example. So you want to align the text. The first column name with syntax is left aligned because you have a colon followed by three dashes indicating the column characteristics. Description is centered because of syntax of columns and dashes in between. The third column name is right aligned because the column characteristics have been right aligned through dashes and colon. Once you run this cell, you will see the output such a way that syntax is left aligned, description column is centered, test text column is right aligned. Hope this illustration of creating tables through columns and rows in Jupyter Notebook through Markdown syntax is clear to you. The last part on this Markdown concepts discusses how to integrate image files on your local system to the Jupyter Notebook using Markdown syntax. The Markdown syntax to include the images is very minimalistic. Begin with exclamatory mark followed by comment or caption for this image within the square brackets. End this syntax with file name and its extension. On my local directory, I have three files. One is a Python image. Second is the New York Manhattan downtown image. And the third is Markdown cheat sheet image. Let me demonstrate on how to add these three images on your local folder to the Jupyter Notebook through Markdown. When I click on this tab, it takes me to the local directory. On this folder, I have Jupyter notebook working file and the 3 images. Let's look at the syntax. Starting the syntax to include the Python logo using exclamatory, followed by text comment, which is Python space logo within the square brackets. At the end, using the file name with the extension. When you run this Markdown cell, Python logo image embedded into the Jupyter node. Likewise, JPEG file created a similar syntax here with New York City as a text comment, followed by nyc.jpeg file name. Run this cell to see the New York downtown image integrated. Lastly, there's a Markdown cheat sheet image. To integrate the Markdown cheat sheet, I use some text for expression purpose to illustrate that Markdown cheat sheet image is embedded into Jupyter Notebook's Markdown cell. In the next line, the syntax written in the same format, exclamatory followed by text comment in square brackets, followed by the image name in PNG extension. When you run the cell, you see the final output. Trust this video helped you understand how to write text cells through Markdown cells and express yourself while writing the code. We'll see more examples in the upcoming sessions when I start teaching the Python concepts to you. Until then, see you later. Thank you.